Welcome back to the post-lunch session. Before we begin, welcome back to the post-lunch session. And before we begin with our presentations today, I am very pleased to announce that His Holiness is being conferred an honorary doctorate degree by the Academy of Sciences of Mongolia, which is the highest academic and scientific organization in Mongolia. I now invite Dr. Bata from Mongolia to take over and preside over this.
Your Holiness, distinguished guests, prominent scholars, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my privilege as well as honor to present this honorary doctorate degree of the Academy of Sciences of Mongolia, which is the highest academic as well as scientific organization in Mongolia, for his valuable contribution to preserving Buddhist culture, education and philosophy in Mongolia. This degree has been conferred on His Holiness. So the diploma of honorary degree will be handed by Professor Namsra Haftra, who is a very well-known nuclear physicist and distinguished member of the World's Academy of Sciences. And at the same time, Ulaanbaatar University, a university which named after the capital city, is also presenting honorary doctorate degree to His Holiness, which is presented by Professor Yanjin Surung from National University of Mongolia. Thank you very much, Your Holiness, for accepting our honorary degree.
Thank you. Although I received a lot of degree from different academic institutions. But from Mongolia is something a special meaning to me. Because we, I think past almost 1,000 years, I think Tibet and Mongol, special relations. I think we Tibetan, sometimes a little bit warrior. That also learned from Mongolia, I think. Then, in Tibetan sort of culture, quite sort of big influence from Mongolian culture. As you young Tibetan, you know, in monastery or temple, usually you see we also put Genjira. That's I think from India, Indian tradition. Then tuk. Tuk says that in Tibetan word, no meaning. Then I inquire with Mongolian friend. Then seems to see that the tradition come from Mongolia. I think the Mongolian Kazajuti, Tama.
Cavalry.
Cavalry. I think ancient time, I think carrying is that. So we have very, very close link. Then, particularly, as I think someone yesterday, I think mentioned, since, you mentioned, since 13th century, right? 13th, Satya Phagpa visited Mongolia. Then, you see, Buddhist tradition, according Nalanda tradition, which we practice, which we follow, that then introduced in Mongolia. And then particularly the third Dalai Lama, Sonam Gyaltso, century Kadri,
16th century.
about 16th century. You see, he went there, and the rest of his life spent there. He died there. So then the Dalai Lama, the very word Dalai Lama, then start. So very word Dalai is a Mongolian word. So some kind of the title of Dalai Lama come from Mongolia. So then, you see, they have their own different language, Mongolian language. And also, you see, their sort of script. But they, chantings or explaining Buddha Dharma, use Tibetan. So when my first visit Mongolia, 1979, still communist, in the monastery, there are chantings, prayer, all in Tibetan. And then those elder monk in the monastery say, when we
Communicate.
when we alone, no translator, then we cannot communicate, but they write Tibetan. Then show me. I also answer in Tibetan. We can communicate that way. So then, at that time, the first time, my sort of presence there, they chanting very loudly in Tibetan. They're so loud, their face also become red. So much sort of sound, very strong sound, like that. So some of them cheer. I also cheer, because that reflect several centuries unique relations. Now they got freedom. And now they have the opportunity to revive their several century-old tradition. We still some problems. So sometimes we have some jealousy. Mongolian brothers, they enjoy freedom like that. So then, since after that, yesterday I also mentioned, you see, they really, I think, the revival or rebuilt was a Buddhist tradition, with full of enthusiasm. So I also have this sort of moral responsibility to help, to serve, whatever way, to them. Nowadays in India, in South India, our big monastic institution, the number of monk students, around 10,000. So there, I think at least about 300 Mongol students now carrying study. So some of them already become, final examination or scholar, like that. When I was in Tibet, when I was very young, many top scholars of Tibet in this monastery, many of them Mongolian, and also the Russian side also. So we have something. Or then my personal assistant for debate on Mongolian. His name is Ngutu Choni. Oh, top scholar. Really, I still remember. His sort of accent, not top class. But you see, he really explained the sophisticated, complicated philosophical points. Very, very helpful. So I always remember these, Varsite, Kasota, these factors. So thank you. Thank you.
Concha.
Oh. Thank you. Oh, be careful, careful, careful.
For the next session for the day, I invite Dr. Yanjin Surin, Department of Philosophy, National University of Mongolia, and Professor Kimberly Schnott Rachel, Faculty of Education, University of British Columbia, Vancouver, to please share their views with us. Professor Poonam Batra, Department of Education, University of Delhi, will be the moderator for this session. I invite her to please take over from here.
For this session. Since we've lost some time, we will try and see if, may I request the speakers to restrict themselves to about 20 minutes of presentation, and then we can have some more time for discussion. I'd like to introduce the first speaker, S. Yanjin, Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophical and Religious Studies at the National University of Mongolia. She has worked on Buddhist philosophy and Mongolian philosophy and is also the president of the Mongolian Association for Tibetan Studies. Has worked very closely with the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science with Tibetan Foundation in London. And a culmination of this work has been a textbook on Buddhist ethics called The Purification of the Soul. So may I request S. Yanjin to make her presentation?
Thank you, His Holiness Dalai Lama, sharing your valuable time with us, and thank you all gathering in these places. Today, I will talk about Buddhist ethical aspects in educational programs in Mongolia, how is going on, and how is developed until today. I think be a successful and contributing member of society with a good standing have an ability to work and live in harmony with others, as well as achieving a state of optimal wellness, are very much driven by one's ethical standard and moral conscience. Therefore, we need to pay a close attention to giving our children and youths an ethical and moral education. We all know that education and upbringing are very important to children's development. For a long time, we talked about education and upbringing. We paid more attention on education. But upbringing and nurturing left our behind and our backside. We brought up many ill-mannered children. Our society and our ministries noticed this situation, and now we begin to talk upbringing or nurturing and education. It means that the education and upbringing changed its place because we have a demand, because we have a need. But I certainly don't mean to undermine the role of science education in our lives, and I am apologizing about it. Ethics and moral education goal is patriotism, honesty, compassion, responsibility, reputation, justice, and life meaning, etc. We indicate or transmit to children about knowledge of morality. Thus, moral education brings people to see things in a different light, and the person with good moral behavior affects others in a positive way. Therefore, citizenship education program developed for secondary school pupils aged 6 to 18 to give a general moral and social understanding in Mongolia. Since early days, Mongolians have a great emphasis on moral upbringing. We have had many sources, but I divided it in 4 groups. Mongolian traditional ethical resources first, folklore and literature. But our literature belongs to Tibetan or Buddhist literature in deep way. Also, the second resource is, I want to say religion. I mean religion is Buddhism for Mongolians. And also we have moral resources and legal resources too. Considering those sources, the Mongolian Ministry of Education and Culture, Science implemented a 2-year project under the theme of Mongolian traditional knowledge and learning. I want to say that Tibetan Foundation in London has contributed immensely to this project. We wrote 3 series of handbook entitled Roots of Mongolian Traditional Ethics for 1st to 5th graders, 6 to 10 years old school pupils. A second, the handbook Purification of the Mind for 6th to 9th graders, for 11th to 14 years old pupils. Third, the source of Buddhist traditional knowledge for 10th to 12th graders and 15 to 18 years old pupils. This 3 series handbook was a big root for nowadays Mongolian citizenship education. Then teachers wrote, when the team of this project writing these books faced some difficulties. The first, Mongolians distanced from Buddhist tradition for 7 decades. The 7 decades is enough time to erase or wipe out one's culture. Second, Mongolians have many books on Buddhist ethics, but all in Tibetan. Even though Mongolian scholars wrote their books in Tibetan language, because Tibetan was Mongolian academic language before 20th century. It means we have language barrier on sources. Lay people don't know Tibetan, only monks and very limited in numbers researchers use Tibetan now. But we could cooperate with lamas to decide these difficulties. I believe it. Third, classical stylistics feature complexity of terminology was third difficulty for us. It means we have many books on Buddhist ethics in Mongolian, but old Mongolian syntaxes. Children cannot understand classical Mongolian, so we have to decide it. The fourth difficulty was the similarity of meaning. It means we had to avoid make meaning the similarity old Mongolian terminology into modern Mongolian. It was most heavy duty for us. The fifth difficulty was people's fear of indoctrination, because Mongolia is a multi-religious country. In 2010, Mongolian president issued decree that about Mongolian traditional thinking, the basis of wisdom and method, was introduced as an academic subject in the Mongolian secondary school curriculum. The decree was a great support to our project. The decree became our footing. Then our teachers developed citizenship education program and 12 series of books for school pupils and 12 series of handbooks for school teachers. Now, pupils studying this series of books, but except of these books, they don't have any sources in modern terminology. The textbooks, citizenship education textbooks, consists 2 main parts. The traditional citizenship education and modern citizenship education. The first part, the traditional citizenship education, depends on Buddhist ethics, aspects such as vice and virtue, the three faults of receptacle, characteristics of a good teacher and good students. Now we see in the tablet for proportion of traditional ethics. It shows for primary education, traditional citizenship education meaning 18 to 90%. And for lower secondary education, 50%. and upper secondary education 30%. This table indicates that students of primary and lower secondary levels tend to have more ethics education program. Ethics education programs, it requires us to teach this subject with clear and simple explanation to peoples, because the studying children's age range and mind features. Actualizing this program for school pupils, we have had several challenges. We passed ideological or atheist period. Social members are ignorant and passive on ethical education. We are living multi-religious society, and everyone has a religious freedom, although we have Buddhist culture soil. We don't have constant policy support, even though. These are emerged. First, lack of resources, I mean studying material. Studying materials for students and teachers are limited in numbers. Also insufficient content, because we have only book. Second, we need specialized educators. Human resources limited in numbers, and we have to enrich methodology and have to renovate monitoring system. Third, if we configure this problem, have to change our environment at home or family, at school, also in society. We're trying to solve about challenges. For the side lack of resources, for example, we can produce cartoons for preschool age children. Maybe it will be very useful to solve Buddhist ethical aspects on their own selfness or own upbringing. And maybe we can print comics or illustrated books for children which are considering children's age range or mind features. Because preschool age children very like to watch cartoons or illustrated books. So it means that I have to catch up this age. We have to treat from preschool age, not after enter to secondary school. It means that if we cannot catch the preschool age, maybe we lost all our tradition, like us. And we can prepare easy readings. For example, Lamrim by Tsongkhapa. We do it illustrated and also make easy readings for children. But of course, we have to tend or have to focus the children's age range. It's most important. About insufficient content, we could do modernization on terminology, but it is very difficult problem. It is philological, also philological and philosophical work. So we tend to specialists. We have to do it together. We have to decide it together. Maybe we need some foreign advisors, such as Tibetans or someone. About educators, provide professional teachers or organize training for teachers. In this decision, universities will play main role. We should develop additional content in curriculum for ethics. It means we add new chapters or paragraphs in old curriculum. But maybe many of you think that why Mongolians should develop curriculum depend on Buddhist ethics. In 2010, National Statistics Office of Mongolia carried out a general population and housing census along with religious census. When looking at religious status of the population, Buddhism is the major religion, followed by Islam, shamanism, Christianity, and other religions in terms of number of followers. According to the data gathered, 61% of population aged 15 and above have some religious faith, of which 86.2% are Buddhists, and the remaining are with other religious faith. The result clearly shows that Buddhism is already established in Mongolia, and that gives us an excellent opportunity to integrate Buddhist ethics into Mongolian educational system. I'd like to mention one particular research in the first quarter of 2013. Purifying Universe Psychological Center in Mongolia carried out a research project in an effort to learn more about the root causes of juvenile delinquency. 80 people participated in the survey, of which 40 young people aged 15 to 18 who have committed crimes, and 40 parents or guardians. All was boy who was committed to crime. The research conductors closely monitored the levels of stress and anxiety of participants and found that out of 40 young offenders, 37.5 reported no sign of stress. They mean it's not bad. And 50% had mild stress. 12 had severe stress. And parents or guardians, 50% had no stress at all. It's awful. And the remaining 50% had mild to moderate stress. And anxiety level of participants, the findings on anxiety level shows that 30% of young people didn't have anxiety. 30% had moderate anxiety, 5% had severe anxiety, and 2.5% suffered from extremely severe anxiety. out of all parents, 37.5% had no anxiety, 47.5% had mild anxiety, and about 7 had moderate anxiety, and also 7 suffered from severe anxiety. The researcher of this project concluded that children who had committed crimes and their parents or guardians both suffer from stress and them need professional help. But I made very different conclusion on it. If 37.5% of children who committed crimes and 50% of parents or guardians are stress-free, 30% of children and 37.5% of parents no anxiety, they feel no remorse at all. For the effect of their actions and behavior, it shows that them need ethical education or training for morality. Not the psychological help, I mean. In Mongolian curriculum in universities also teaches ethical education. For example, National University of Mongolia academic curriculum is a perfect example of curriculum innovation in Mongolian higher educational system. For example, bachelor degree programs, we have the Code of Ethics and the History of Mongolian Ethical Thinking in philosophy classes. The second curriculum, the History of Mongolian Ethical Thinking, is based on Buddhist ethical codes. And also the Code of Ethics in history teacher courses, religious ethics in classes of religious studies, and journalists' code of ethics and journalism. And also we had some master degree program, for example, professional and applied ethics and Buddhist ethics. For doctoral degree curriculum, ethics, theory, and contemporary issues, and Buddhist ethics and modernism. Now, we want to open new curriculum. Currently, our university and the Ministry of Education Mongolia are working together on a large-scale curriculum reform and building an innovative curriculum for master's and doctoral degree programs in Buddhist studies. They have didactics for Buddhist ethics and Buddhist and citizenship education. Although knowledge and skills are major contributors to success, they don't necessarily teach how to be a good man. Ethical values is considered as important and sometimes more important to personal development and future success than knowledge and skills. But I don't mean to de-emphasize the role of knowledge and professional education in our society. Thank you for attention.
It's a very interesting presentation where a few things which I thought can be highlighted before we open it for discussion and dialogue. I think the very idea that knowledge is a legitimate route for transformation. But the method of knowing is really also what seems to be highlighted in your presentation. And the fact that you have very carefully looked at developmentally appropriate ways of looking at children of different age groups.
Yes.
And how you need to proceed from a focus on ethics to a focus on the mind, and then coming to Buddhist traditional knowledge. So moving towards a greater abstraction and study. And I think the significance of the role of educators and the intersections of disciplines where new knowledges can emerge. So I think that's been a very interesting presentation. And we can now open this for discussion, questions and comments. Would we have about 15 minutes for this, or 20 minutes? 15 minutes, right. Okay. Would His Holiness like to start with any specific comment?
No, we didn't find. I find just one, but the meaning was borrowed from outside. So I mean, the comic's main role was Mongolian monk, should be, and maybe we can do, for example, some Mongolian using Mongolian tales meaning and connect to Buddhist ethical codes and shows them by Mongolian role. Maybe it will be very useful for Mongolian preschool age children.
I'm very much impressed to see you. So they carry some research seriously. So then, usually, I always believe and also express the religion or faith related with individual. Culture related with the society. So I usually make distinction, Buddhism and Buddhist culture. So similarly, Christianity and Christian culture. The West, they have strong Judeo-Christian cultural heritage. But among the community, there are Muslims and non-believer, and nowadays some Buddhists also. I think very few Hindus. But particularly, you see, some American now become Sikh somewhere.
No.
Sikh. So that's quite significant. Good, although very few number. So among the people, you see, individually, you see different faith. Some people no faith, but community as a whole, a certain Judeo-Christian tradition. So similarly, like Mongolia, and we Tibetan also, I think the society, in terms of the society, Buddhist culture. Among the people, there's some Muslims, since I think last 4 centuries, some Muslims there. And as a matter of fact, during 15th Dalai Lama, he very, very sort of powerful soul,
Influential.
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 Under control.
No.
So he provided land
for construction of mosque in Lhasa. So that means, you see, a different religion, but accept, not only accept, but sort of support. So I think we Tibetan, traditionally we have that kind of sort of religious freedom, no, like that. But in the terms of culture, Buddhist culture, so some of the Muslim, Tibetan Muslims, their faith is concerned Muslim, but their way of life very much in the spirit of Buddhist culture. One of my as a Kashmiri Muslim, I think who born in Tibet, and all his sort of early part of life is spent in Tibet. Then after 59, also did escape to India, escape or rather sort of give sort of permission from the Chinese authority. So then they settled in Srinagar. Who speak Tibetan, Lhasa dialect. Very beautiful. So once he told me his sort of experience, the pilgrim Mecca. So then he mentioned there is, of course, animal sacrifice. So part of the pilgrim. So he mentioned that, and he have to kill. So meantime he expressed, he really feel very much sort of, compassion to the animal. So that's the sort of certain his thinking, very much Buddhist culture, like that. So now you are trying to build. I think the ultimate sort of goal is healthy society. Healthy society means honest, truthful. For that, very much related with compassionate ethics. No. So I think Buddhism, if you know Buddhist tradition, particularly Nalanda tradition, then usually the Nalanda tradition, those writing wrote by Nalanda masters, they firstly they sort of raise questions, different sort of traditions. Then some debate. Then second part, they explain about Buddhist point. Then third, the further sort of discussion.
No.
So in the Nalanda master's writings, you find basically them dealing with refutation of others' positions first, and then establishing one's own position, and then rebuttal of any criticism to those positions.
So this very, very helpful to, firstly, some kind of provoke your thought. A lot of different views and sort of the argument. Then set up your own view, Buddhist view. Then further, some kind of, I think the first part, I may say, first part, some kind of offensive. Second part, your own sort of view. Third part, some kind of defense. So therefore, every sort of point or thought, views, thoroughly discussed. So a person who
go through that kind of text, then your mind, certainly your views, then really kasa solid, kasa consolidated survey.
Now, you were able to establish your position firmly.
Just simply sort of, oh, Buddha said that I should believe. Then not very sort of sound. So sometimes Tibetan masters writing take for granted audience are Buddhist. So not much discussion about these things. The Nalanda master, you see, the circumstance is such, you see, among many different school of thought. And then, you see, they write presentation, right?
No.
Present their own view among many different views. So these are relevant. In Tibet case, majority of them Buddhist, so quite simple way. So these days I prefer, we should go the Nalanda sort of way of teaching. That's very important. Some of our own Lama, quite simple. So actually, the way of Buddha's teaching, you see, mainly, you see, utilize confidence, full of enthusiasm, describe nirvana, permanent peace. So then try to develop enthusiasm to achieve that. Some Tibetan sort of, I would say, writing, firstly mentioned hell, utilize fear. I think this is wrong way. So I often used to telling one story in Tibet. One time, they say one one sort of was the abbot of the monastery. One day, someone come to see abbot. Then that very day, abbot not there. Abbot went somewhere. So then the person asked some sort of people in the monastery, I want to meet abbot. And then one person in the monastery, she told, now our abbot went to terrifying the innocent people. You see, telling, hell, unless you worship Lama, you go to hell. Nonsense. Really. Nalanda sort of type, not that way. Explain what's Buddhism, what's our goal, nirvana or Buddhahood. And we all have the ultimate sort of source or potential to become Buddha. So, you see, one important point is Buddha nature, Tathagata Garva, Sungata Shindaya. So that's the seed of Buddha. So mention that. If you make some effort, you already have the Buddha seed. So you can grow that. So that's a very positive way to approach. I think for me, it is much better to lead that way rather than, oh, please be careful, otherwise you go to hell. Firstly, where is hell? Not very sure, not very clear. Nirvana within ourselves. It is much easier. And that also is now a connection with yesterday's Dimarve. The emptiness, the Nagarjuna's view, emptiness. The understanding emptiness is the antidote, very powerful sort of weapon to combat the ignorance which
Distorts reality.
which grasping things are independently exist. So that acting like basis of anger, attachment, like that. So the practice of love is antidote, but on a superficial level. The understanding or realization of shunyata is the really shaking the basis of anger, attachment. That's ignorance. So distorted through because of the view.
No.
Things. Now here, quantum physics, very, very helpful. So nothing exists by objectively. So your enemy or your friend, which you develop anger or attachment, actually does not exist objectively. Your own mental projection. So that understanding really reduces the intensity of wrong view. That's the basis of all destructive emotion. So I practice that. So suppose you see the other speakers, you see each one you see stress your own special field. So I also want to stress my own field. That's the shunyata. Really, I practice that now. Last, I think, almost 6 decades. Then recent decades, I seriously meditate on that. Immense help. Reduce. It's a destructive emotion. So now my sort of long-time friend also here. I want to sort of to say one my sort of wish. Some sort of investigation, the intensity of destructive emotion among those scientists who not only sort of carry research about quantum physics, but also who believe that maybe the intensity of their anger, attachment, maybe they are simply, they try to know the reality. Nothing applied to practice. But because of understanding the reality, the wrong emotion,
Negative emotions. Negative emotions.
or negative emotion, actually based on that kind of sort of impression, things there. So one, so one, you physicist, yes, quantum physicist, or nuclear physicist.
No.
One Indian nuclear physicist. You see, now he no longer. One time he told me in Delhi, you see, some occasion, you see, he told me the concept of quantum physics sort of concept. In the world, this is something new. But in this country, 2,000 years ago, already developed that concept. Mm-hmm. Nothing independently exists. Mm-hmm. Then another, now American scientist, now his age, 96 years old, the Aaron Beck.
No.
Aaron Beck. So recently I visit America, I deliberately tried to see him, and I visited his own home. He, years sort of his experience, and also some research, and he found when we develop anger towards someone as an enemy, that moment the person or the enemy appears very negative. But 90% of negativeness is mental projection. This is exactly Nagarjuna stated that. So that mental projection, you see, develop wrong view or things there, independent, absolute. So once you realize nothing absolute, then the intensity of anger reduces. That's the work, work of the concept of emptiness. You mentioned that. So in any way, so you know, the ancient Indian sort of tradition, Nalanda masters, that approach, that way of approach is, I think, very scientific and very realistic. And I may say unbiased. Some of the Tibetan writing, a little bit biased. They simply, right from the beginning, they believe, oh, Buddhism is best. So then a little bit biased. Indian master, a lot of comparison. Then finalize, oh, this view, say, fully backing by reasons. So that's much better. That is scientific way. So I think,
No.
as yesterday I mentioned the one quotation, Buddha should accept Buddha's teaching out of thorough investigation and experiment. So like that. So therefore, you see, Mongolian, I think you should, firstly, in order to share young people or students, I think the teacher should be full of knowledge, right?
No, should have.
Who really spent at least 20 years study. Then, you see, you can get some, I think, meaningful suggestions or advice. Without knowledge, big name, humble Lama, not very sure. And similarly, Tibetan also is a high reincarnated Lama without much knowledge. They are quite expert sitting on high throne and perform some puja. But if you ask some, you say, oh, I have some sort of story. One very high Lama, Tibetan high Lama, in early, I think, 70s, you see, one day some foreigner, some French group used to visit him, and then the Lama said, now today I'm free, so sit and we can talk. And then serve tea. Then one Frenchman asked, what is 10 boobies, 10 stages? Then Lama immediately said, now I'm Hare. Lama have no knowledge about 10 boobies. So like that, I think best thing, Lama should say, I don't know. That simple answer. But that also, the Lama, you see, a little bit dare.
No.
A little bit difficult to say, I don't know. So silly. Then previously say, I'm free. Then the subject come. Then she say, I'm Hare. So disgraceful. So you should seek Kasota, the trained or scholar, and not only just a scholar, word, but some experience. Then very useful. You should get sort of their opinions according to their own experience and their knowledge, and then you can put on paper. Clear. So it may take another several decades, if not 100 years, So these go, you see, gradually. And also is the actual sort of experiment and how much effect. Then, you see, according that experiences, then you can change some addition or some reduce. I think Nalanda tradition, I think at least through several centuries now these things that happen, not just one day. So now, modern world and sophisticated sort of mind, I think Nalanda tradition, I think capable to cope with that kind of a situation. I feel that. Maybe my views are pro-Nalanda, maybe dangerous. You should judge. Those scientists, I think, should judge. Maybe my view may be wrong, or pro-Nalanda, or too much biased. You should judge.
Thank you. I think His Holiness has really prompted us to look at the complex engagement of fundamental questions of knowledge and knowing, and the whole process of inquiry. The next presentation will take us to looking at the critical, clinical practice and research that can lead us to looking at how we can develop compassion, empathy, self-regulation, kindness in children. And Kimberly, who is an applied developmental psychologist, will make this presentation. She's a professor in Human Development Learning and Culture program at the Faculty of Education, University of British Columbia. She's been engaged with clinical research, has also been a school teacher, and her area of research focus on social and emotional development of children and adolescents, most importantly in identifying processes and mechanisms that foster positive human qualities. She's also a fellow of the Mind and Life Institute. May I request Kimberly to please start her presentation.
I think it was on mute. Okay. Great. Let me just get this up and then I'll get going. So it's an honor to be here today with Your Holiness. Thank you so much, Minashka, for organizing this. And it's wonderful to be able to share with you some of the work I've been doing in Vancouver, Canada. So we've met a couple of times before in Vancouver as part of the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. And I just want to also say how honored I am to be here with all of the other presenters and everyone else here. This is my first time in India, and so I'm really enjoying it. Thank you so much for such warm hospitality. So in this next little while, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the work that I've been doing on educating the heart. I have been working for about 2 decades trying to find the ways to promote empathy, compassion, and altruism in children. And I don't know if you see this picture here. Do you recognize anybody in that picture? Can you see yourself? Right there, this was when you were in Vancouver, you joined part of a gratitude circle of children where you got to share your gratitude. And it was part of a program called Mind Up, and I'm going to be telling you about some of the research I've been doing on that program. And I know the children really enjoyed being with you. Just in the next little while, I'm going to share with you a bit of the background, talk about why now do we need to educate the heart? Why now do we need to focus on empathy and compassion? I know you've really been talking about this for a long time, that we need to start with children, that we need to focus on promoting compassion and empathy. I'm going to talk about what now do we need to do, and I talk about social and emotional learning and secular ethics and how we need to embed that in school. And what is the science now, though? There's just emerging research on, do these programs work with children? Can you embed programs that bring in mindfulness with children? And do they have a positive benefit to children in schools? And then I'm going to talk a bit about some future directions. But I want to begin with a story of why have I spent my entire life, my entire career, academic career, my professional career, trying to figure out why we need to focus on educating the heart. And it really was my experiences as a teacher. I began as a teacher of adolescents who had problems. They were in a special school because they left the regular high school. They had drug and alcohol problems. Some of them had committed crimes. Many of them had had families where they didn't get that maternal love that they needed early on. And I started working at this school very young. And I have to say it was really difficult at first. Many of these students were kind of mean to me. They didn't really... Yeah. But I knew that maybe they were pushing me away because school hadn't been very good for them. And I was a teacher, so I would just be another person who to tell them that they were going to fail. So, but I decided to feel that that was their protection. They needed to do that until they needed to learn to trust me. I needed to show them compassion. And finally, I had many good relationships with the students. And at the Christmas time, I decided I wanted to get them to do a fund, raise toys for needy children, that we would go around and collect toys for children who didn't have any toys for Christmas time. And I went to the other teachers and I said, I want to do this in this school. And the other teacher said, are you kidding? These kids will steal the toys. You can't expect them to do anything like that. But I said, no, I think I'm going to try it. I'm going to do an experiment and see what happens. And soon, one by one, they began bringing toys. Some first said, the girls actually brought the toys first because they brought the little toys for the children. And then some of the boys started saying, oh, my mom told me I had to bring this. And then one day, one of the boys who was the hardest to reach, he never really talked to me that much, and he just seemed very difficult to teach. He comes into class one day, and this was in Chicago. I don't know if anyone knows, it gets really cold in Chicago in the wintertime. And he had a big, heavy coat on, and I was sitting in my desk, and the box for the toys was right across from me. And he comes into the classroom, and he looks around to see, is anybody looking but me? And out of his coat, he takes a toy truck and puts it in the box for the children. And so I thought to myself, there were 3 lessons I learned. One is I think we underestimate children's capacity for being kind, that they have it in them, and we just have to create the context in ways that will let that come out. The second thing I learned was that it's all about relationships. Those students, I had spent time building those connections with them. And if I hadn't done that, I'm not sure they would have brought in the toys. And third, the other thing, as a teacher, I was a teacher there for 3 years. And I loved my students, but it took a toll on me. I was very stressed, and I actually had some physical health problems at times because I took it all in, and no one was there to support me in all of it. No one was there to help me deal with all of the problems that the children had that I kind of took so seriously. And it really made me think that we need more things that help teachers, that care for teachers so they can do that kind of caring. So The other thing that we need to do, and what I'm going to be talking about, is how we need to educate the heart and the mind in school. And what the research that's just emerging now is saying, educating the heart and taking the time to promote empathy and compassion doesn't take away from learning, it actually helps learning. It actually helps students do better in school. So that when teachers say, I don't have the time to do that kind of stuff, we could have data now to show, well, actually students get higher grades when you take the time to create that. One of the things, why now, and you've talked, Your Holiness, you've talked about this so many times, of why now do we need to do this, but I'm just going to share with people. We know we have increased bullying, stress of children, decreased empathy. There's actually research showing a study that looked at 14,000 college students from 1979 to 2009 and found that empathy has decreased, especially since the year 2000. And we also have issues around poverty and mental illness. Some other research shows now that there's a stress contagion, that when you're actually, even if you're not experiencing stress, so if you're around other people who are stressed, even if you're not stressed, you catch it. Now think about children who are at homes where there's a lot of stress among the parents. The children get the stress. Or where the teachers are very stressed. And there's data now showing that children who are in classrooms with teachers with higher levels of stress have more problems themselves. So what now do we need to do? And I argue a focus specifically on social and emotional learning, or educating the heart, or secular ethics. I think there's lots of different ways we can talk about it. And what we're finding throughout the world, there's an increased focus on this notion of educating the heart, of making this a part of education, an explicit part of the curriculum, as well as you heard in Mongolia, this is also becoming part of that. And I know you've been in British Columbia, in Vancouver. And Vancouver, what we're doing in British Columbia, we have a specific focus on educating the heart. And they're redoing the entire kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum to have a focus on social and personal competency. So in addition to reading and math and other academic subjects, they're now going to put within the curriculum a focus on developing a positive personal and cultural identity. Things like personal awareness, self-awareness, awareness of your emotions, as well as things like empathy and social responsibility embedded within K-12 curriculum. And I believe we're one of the only places in the world where this is happening so intentionally. And one of the reasons it's happening is actually because in Vancouver is the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. And you know your friend over there, Victor Chan, who is a founder of that. And it's really, I want to tell you now of how important your visits have been to Vancouver. Because it was through your visits, you've come 4 times in the past decade, that has really basically energized educators and people at the ministry to do the work, to put this in the classroom, to educate the heart. However, to me, and I think you might agree, that the science is so important. You need to have the experimental studies that really focus on this, of educating the heart. Because a lot of people might say, of course it works, but we need to actually have the data. And I have to say, although I've been working as a teacher and also now I'm a scientist, I went back to school to know how I can do the science. Because in some ways, I'm somewhat skeptical. I need to see the actual data, the research to say, are these true? And there's a couple of findings that we've had. Number one, we have found that those social and emotional skills are malleable. They can be taught. The children, given the right context, the curriculum, other things in the home environment, that you can increase empathy. You can promote kindness in children. You can help develop better ways to deal with destructive emotions and stress. And actually, it's good to start very young giving them those skills than to wait till they're much older. The other thing that we've learned, oh, here, do you want me? Okay, is that help? The other thing is we know now from the research is that you can actually increase happiness. that by doing things like practicing gratitude, counting your blessings, increases your happiness. And also, one of my favorite ways that has been shown to increase happiness is helping others, is doing and performing acts of kindness. We now know that that raises your happiness.
Picture of the camel, not necessarily expression of happiness, expression of hunger.
I don't know if everybody heard you said the camel looks more like it's hungry than. Oh, it is. Oh, that's great. See, we have a connection there. That's wonderful. And finally, another piece of research we're now finding is that it's good to be good. That helping others is not only raises your happiness, but it improves your health, that you actually have better health outcomes. However, the research on children and adolescents about health and helping others is not really there. So we've done a research study, and I'm going to just tell you briefly about a study that we wanted to know if helping others, is volunteering, actually improves your heart health, reduces risk for cardiovascular disease. So we did a research study. So we did a study, and you're gonna be kind of like my participants in this study. So we looked at high school students who were 15 years old, who were in a lower economic area. And we wanted to know if volunteering would reduce their risk for heart disease. So we first took them, and to get their cholesterol level and something called IL-6, we had to take their blood. So we took the blood of 106 students, and by the way, 15-year-olds will give you their blood for about $20. So we got them to be in the study. We took their blood, we took their height and weight, and we also had them fill out measures. And then half of them we assigned to volunteer once a week for 10 weeks for an hour and a half a week. And what they did is they worked with little kids. They went to one of the elementary schools and either did cooking or crafts or sports. The other group, they just did whatever they usually do after school. For 10 weeks, this group, they went and they volunteered for an hour and a half and helped these little kids. Then we came back after 10 weeks and we took their blood again, gave them more money. Also, we took their height and weight and we had them fill the surveys out again. What we found is the group that volunteered for just 10 weeks lowered their cardiovascular risk. They decreased significantly in cholesterol, decreased significantly in IL-6, and their body mass index went down. This group, sorry, nothing happened. But what we found was that those students...
Can you explain why it happened?
I know, that would be good. That's great. I actually went to try and figure that out. We went and we talked to the teachers. I was going to say the one other finding we found, those that went the most up in empathy had the best results. We went back and talked to...
May I argue, is it because of some volunteer work, so a little bit tired, so therefore, good sleep.
I love that. I love that explanation. The other thing is that we found that, I think that's a great explanation. Some of the kids, though, told us that they felt when they went to, when they went to volunteer, there's a couple of things. That when you're in high school, I don't know if anybody remembers high school, is it kind of stressful? And if you go and work with the little children, no matter what, they make you happy. They come, and you could be someone who isn't that popular in high school, but when you go around the little kids, they run to you and hug you, and you feel like you have a sense of purpose. You feel like you matter to others. And so that was some of the things they told us. They felt like that it really made a difference. This is just the results. I won't go into that. But more research needs to be done. That was the first study ever done looking at volunteering with high school students. So what about social and emotional learning and now putting it with mindfulness for children? And we've been doing some of the first research, empirical studies, experiments with looking at social and emotional learning with mindfulness in school settings in Vancouver. And we've been looking at a program called Mind Up. And there's some students being part of the Mind Up program. It's a program that was developed in about 2007, 2008. Started in Vancouver. And actually, to date, in British Columbia, over 1,000 teachers have been trained in the program. It's kindergarten through 8th grade, or 5 to 14-year-olds. It has 15 lessons that include things like they first learn how their brain works. So the first part of the lessons are not about doing mindfulness. It's about how does your brain work? That we all have brains, from little kids learning about their amygdala and their prefrontal cortex. So they first learn about that, and then they do mindful listening, mindful seeing, mindful smelling, as well as mindful tasting. That's one of my favorites. Mindful movement. And this helps them develop things like self-awareness and self-management. They then move on to doing things like taking others' perspectives, to learning about optimism, the glass half full, to savoring happy experiences, to finally doing acts of gratitude, acts of kindness, mindful action in the community. So you actually did one of the lessons for this program when you did the gratitude circle in Vancouver. This is just a poster they get to learn about their brain. And then the core part of the program, over the course of the school year, they learn a core practice of mindful breathing, where they go and do pause, listen, and do breathing to a resonant sound. And they do it 3 times a day. When they come in the morning, before lunchtime or after lunch, and then at the end of the school day. And I just have to say, before I start telling you about the findings, so I have to say, when I started doing research on this, I was very skeptical. I was not sure that the children would like doing it. I wasn't sure if the teachers would actually do it. And we were proven wrong. The children loved it. In fact, they would be reminding their teachers, we haven't done the mindful breathing yet. And they'd be worried if their teacher wasn't going to be there a day, and they'd say, who's going to be doing our mindful breathing with us? The teachers tell us, I do it for me because I need to have this time to pause and to relax. This is just that gratitude circle I showed you before. So what has our research shown so far? So this is one of the first studies to say, does doing this program where you integrate social and emotional learning, positive psychology, some neuroscience, in with mindful attention awareness? And what we found, we've done 3 studies so far. The first study, and I'm just going to do a brief thing, we found that students, and we did experimental studies where half of the students were assigned to the program and the other half didn't get anything. And we found that in the first study, that students who received the program significantly increased in their optimism. They became more able to see the glass half full. And as we know, optimism is such an important personality or a character trait, because people who are optimistic are able to have better health. They have a number of other better factors. They also, and I don't have it here, teachers saw their changes in behavior. They became less aggressive. They became more attentive in the classroom. And then we wanted to do a sort of larger study where we looked at them. In the second study, we wanted to look at, did this Mind Up program through a randomized controlled trial actually change their attention through computer tasks? So we used computer tasks to look at, did it improve their attention, as well as did it improve their behavior, how they treated each other? Did they become more kind and more caring? And this was a study with 4th and 5th graders. And this one, we found that to be true. They became faster, or they're better able to inhibit their responses on a computerized test. So they're more able to use cognitive control in their executive functions. So they were faster on these computer tasks. The kids in the program that got the Mind Up versus the children in the control. They also reported having less depression. They went down significantly in their depressive symptoms and their negative emotions. And note that what happens in the other children who did not get the program, they actually increased in their depressive symptoms. And then we wanted to know, how did they treat each other? So here, I know it's kind of hard to read. What we found was we did peer ratings. So we had children rate their peers on these behaviors. Do they share? Are they trustworthy? Can you trust them? Are they helpful? Are they able to take other people's points of views? And what we found is the children who received Mind Up significantly increased in those. And what you see here, though, is the children in the comparison group actually got lower in the course of the school year in those things. And that, to me, is very concerning. Okay, so our last study that we've just completed tried to answer the question, do you think it matters if the teacher, we were just talking about how the teacher needs to have some experience and knowledge and background before they teach the students. So we wanted to know, what about if we did a study where the teachers first get their own mindfulness program and then do it with the students. And so we did 3 groups. One group of children where the teachers got their own mindfulness program called Smart in Education and then did the Mind Up program. One group that just had the Mind Up and the other group that didn't have anything. And we wanted to know, what impact would it have if the teachers first had their own mindfulness program before they started working with the children? And it sort of comes from this idea. Have you been on an airplane where they always tell you, first put the mask on the person, the adult, before you put it on the child? With that notion, we need to maybe first take care of the teachers. And what we found was, first, when we looked at students' reports of well-being in terms of positive emotions, the children who were in classrooms where their teacher had the mindfulness program first and then did the Mind Up program had the highest changes in improved well-being compared to the children's teachers' classrooms that they only had the Mind Up program, and actually there was no change at all in the control group. So this value added of having a teacher's mindfulness program plus the program for the children. We then... Is that okay? Okay. Next, we looked at empathy, and we wanted to say, these are teacher reports of empathy. What you see here is these children who are in the classrooms who their teacher had the program, and then they had the program, had the greatest increase in empathy compared to just the children who had no teacher who had the program, but they just did it, versus the control. And finally, and this is kind of my favorite, one of my favorite ones, was what happened is, you see, we asked teachers to rate their closeness with each one of their students. How close are you with this student? The teachers who were in the classrooms who had their own mindfulness program first and then did the program, they rated very high closeness with each of their students compared to the teachers who only had the Mind Up and the control in this session. So I think, this is emerging data. It's one of the first studies I'm aware of where we've experimentally tested this, but I think it's very promising, saying that we benefit so much more when the teachers get focus on their own well-being first and then deliver the program for students. So some future directions, I just want to emphasize this idea. Oh, the one thing I meant to say, the one thing I didn't report was the students in that study, in the second study, actually also got higher math grades. So they not only had better well-being, but higher academic achievement, which I think is really important for schools to know. So sort of some bottom questions here. I think I have many future directions. We need more empirical studies. We need longitudinal research. We need much more collaboration. But I think if I want to say, to come full circle, that teachers really need the support and coaching, that we really need to help teachers, and I'm not sure if there's any teacher education students here, of how much when they're in teacher training, to be able to develop and cultivate these skills, to be able to reduce stress. And finally, I think we also need to think about bringing this in a whole community. So there's a project that's happening in Vancouver right now in which they're it's called the Mind the Gap project, and they're bringing mindfulness and focusing on 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds transition, but they're doing a program for teachers, they're doing a program for parents, and they're doing the program for children, all together in one community to find a way to actually have a systems level change to making a difference in promoting well-being in children. Okay, thank you. Is it working? Oh, it's on.
I think that, Kimberly has been able to demonstrate to us that there are, within the so-called modern scientific research methods, there are ways to try and assess specific outcomes of programs that actually are dealing with something as intangible as empathy or kindness or compassion. So it's interesting. I also feel that it would be a good idea if we were to look at this and how we can release this kind of an intervention where we are looking to create compassion and empathy, to release it from its very behavioristic frame. Because I think what His Holiness has been trying to communicate with us is the fact that there has to be a deeper level of change. The change can't be just at the behavior level, and we do need to engage with developing greater insights and perhaps self-reflexivity that will help us to take compassion and empathy, which becomes a part of a culture. And if I may just quickly add that there have been cultural studies done to show that cultures have been resilient and have social bondings. And I think we need to draw upon some of those aspects of our traditional cultures and bring them into what we call a formal learning space, because in my understanding, teaching is about social practice, and so is learning. So thank you very much, and I would now open this for questions. Yes.
You have a mic?
Thank you. This is, in a way, the answer to the question I had this morning about the link between research and pedagogy. Just to mention that we've been actually training teachers in India for more than 1,000 teachers and thousands of students in this, but not with research. And so I see the importance of research in this work. But I have a question for His Holiness, if you don't mind, because you were saying about the importance of bringing the understanding of shunyata into education. And I know for young people, students, how would you suggest some preliminary practices or meditative practices where, because compassion, mindfulness, we can understand now, we're understanding how to bring that to students and what sort of practices we can do to bring empathy and compassion into a school curriculum. But in terms of understanding or deepening one's understanding of shunyata, how would we do that with young children? At what age? What practices would we do? I know Your Holiness has been saying you've been practicing for 6 decades, so maybe there's some more advanced practices, but even simple practices for young children, at what age, even before the child is born, but especially school level, or do we have to start at college? Can we start at kindergarten? So it's just some practical suggestions of how we might introduce shunyata practice into the school curriculum. Thank you.
So, my answer is, I don't know. You see,
the practice of shunyata, you need a lot of thinking, a lot of sort of analytical meditation, and also time factor. Firstly, you see, I think someone this morning mentioned the Tujung, Samjung, Kumjung Sati.
No, someone, yeah, you mentioned about the necessity for going through the process of hearing, reflecting, and meditation.
Oh. So then, actually, I think the general concept, according to Buddhism, firstly, quite grosser level about emptiness. The first, no independent self. So, anathema theory. So that's all four Buddhist school of thought accepted that. Then Chitta mantras, a certain sort of concept of emptiness. Then Madhyamika. Within Madhyamika, Sotantik Madhyamika, and
Prasankika.
Prasankika Madhyamika. So the concept of emptiness becoming more subtler. My own case, I think in 6 days, 7 days, although I use the word according Prasankika sort of philosophical word, but real my understanding is a Sotantic sort of Madhyamika philosophical sort of views. Then gradually, I think 80s, 90s, then understanding become deeper and deeper. So I always just check, according to my own understanding, not just intellectually understanding, some feeling. So then I always just check some authentic text. Then once the authentic sort of text explanation and compare my own feeling, experience, goes because of the same way, then I feel, oh, maybe now that is because of the correct understanding. And then still, you see, need time. You see, familiarize that. And then gradually, the real feeling becoming stronger. Like that. So then, I think last 10 years, that means, Kazirda, 2000,
2005.
2005. So then, it seems to me, I think okay, because of the correct understanding. So actually, really, I usually see telling people, any Buddhist, the unique way Buddhist approach is utilize human intelligence maximum way, explore maximum way, through that way transform our emotion. So the shunyata concept, not easy. Even the great Nalanda masters, some of them very much confused. Only Buddhapalita and Chandakirti, their explanation is really very clear, wonderful. Among Tibetan scholars also, you see, there are sort of cases of confusion. So these are not easy. And then I should say, these sort of meditation is my private secret meditation. I mean, need a lot of effort, study, first study. And as far as Madhyamika philosophy is concerned, you need thorough sort of study about Buddha Palida's text. Then Viveka's text. There is some argument. So read both. It's very helpful. Viveka accuse or criticize Buddha Palida's view. What his sort of reasons? Think more. Then the clear answer made by Chandakirti. So what his sort of reasons. And then you make comparison and also related with your own sort of feeling. And for me, this practice, quantum physics, after I learned quantum physics, also immense help. Sometimes you see text, yes, 1,000 years ago, you see, wrote. Sometimes, I mean, frankly speaking, my mind, say, quite sort of, or say, means skeptical. Skepticism. So then quantum physics, you see, not sort of, what say, Buddhist scholar, in a way, a little bit biased. Possible, it's a biased view. Look, Chidamandara sort of, the believer, Chidamandara's, because of the philosophy, believer, they feel Chidamandara's view is best. The Madhyamika student, they feel Madhyamika is best. So we need someone who judge unbiasedly. So in that respect, I feel the scientist just open mind and unbiased. So certain things they found confirm about Nagarjuna's view. This is his sort of explanation. Then that's immense help, you see, to develop firm then believe sort of.
Belief, no.
Believe
Conviction. Conviction brings.
Oh, because of the deeper understanding, genuine admiration, like that. So then many years ago, when my late main tutor, Ling Rinpoche, who gave me this bhikshu ordination, and since my childhood, I think 7 years old, he already took main responsibility, give me teaching or explanation. So then, before his death, one day, I sort of, some kind of was a report about my understanding about shunyata. Then he responded to me, now very soon you will be Nanganajova.
You'll be a space yogi. So to say.
That means a practitioner who understands about shunyata. So that, I think, gives me great sort of encouragement, as you mentioned. If my teachers say, difficult, then discourage. Or give me hopeful sort of indication, then develop more enthusiasm. I think children also, isn't it? Praising, and love. Then they are sort of enthusiasm develop, isn't it? Although my teacher also kept one whip. Mixture, little thread, and love. At very young age, whip more effective. gradually grown up, love is more effective.
Okay.
So, Tibetan student and Mongolian also, you see, we traditionally, we are Buddhist. So this concept, not just idea, actually very helpful. You see, you mentioned the government policy, something ubaya, that means method. And wisdom, that's a panja. So combination, panja and ubaya. Now, essence of ubaya is altruism. The essence of panja is understanding. Nothing independently exists. So as you combine these two things, then your mind, something become something, I think, peaceful, completely relaxed, quite useful. I think your presentation, really wonderful. You see, the scientific way to investigate and watching result effect. So that's very, very important. You see, sometimes we theoretically certain sort of concept develop. Then actual experiment is very essential. So then you see combine theoretical way of some plan, and then practical way test. That's, I think, best way to give confirmation. Now this is right.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Firstly, I'm honored to be in this room and the presence of His Holiness and this team panel. So my question is actually for His Holiness and Miss. Yeah, I can't pronounce his name. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
A little bit louder.
So for His Holiness, Dr. Kimberly and Miss Yamjan, I guess. So the whole point that you were stating about this Buddhist ethics actually improving and practically putting Buddhist ethics into infant's mind or population of the whole Mongolia. So what do you mean by that actually? So are you trying to put this Buddhist religious ethics into people's mind, or are you trying to put like Buddhist in a philosophical way? What are you trying to do? As in, if an atheist family wanted to incorporate this Buddhist ethics into their children, what would they do?
What question?
No, I mean,
Hold on. I think actually in Buddhist teaching, main Buddhist sort of concept is no independent self. But Buddha's some teaching, you see, take for granted there is independent self.
So in certain sutras, there's mention of these 5 psychophysical aggregates being the burden or the load, and the person as the carrier of that load.
Then, you see, some teaching, Buddha stated, no external things externally exist, but mind is independent. Then another sort of Buddhist teaching say, external things does exist, as far as independent existence is concerned, both external as well as mind, both does not exist independently. This is now quantum physics say. Nothing objectively exists. Okay. So this shows, you see, Buddha accept the actual circumstances, actual reality. If someone who very much believe about Atma, then if Buddhists say, no Atma, no help. So he taught according to that person's sort of mental situation. So if Buddha reappear today, he fully support secular ethics. He never insists you should accept Buddhism as a faith. He never, I think, insisted that. Clear? So therefore, our way of approach in education field, strictly secular way.
It's not working.
Then, as you mentioned, you see the moral ethics. Buddhist way of explanation is use reason. Not say, oh, Buddha said that, we must follow. We never say that. So, secular ethics, we need explanation. Then, like Shantadeva's explanation, how harmful our anger, hatred, and how useful altruism. He simply used reasons according to common sense. So these we can apply in secular ethics. So explanation about secular ethics. Take as a secular sort of thing, not talking about next life, or not talking about a nirvana. Nirvana, these things are personal business, private business. Now, some answer?
Yes.
And you also.
Why we choosing Buddhist ethics into our program, developing into our program? First, we have many books. For example, in Central Library, we have about 1 million sutras in Tibetan. And also we have a Ganjur and Danjur in Mongolian, but it is just only copy in our Central Library. Just we are now translating it into modern Mongolian. It is a first materialistic demand. And also, the Buddhist teaching defended on morality teaching and ethical teaching. But we are human beings. Ethics is a human being's problem. So we have to search Buddhist ethics. And we all have children. Also, we all have future. We want to form them in good way, in good manner. So we have to choose right way. We are Mongolians depending our traditional and our cultural soil. So we choosing Buddhist ethics.
Okay, I think we'll bring this session to a close. Thank very much the speakers and His Holiness for very discerning comments and remarks. Thank you so much.
Not 1 minute. His Holiness wants to speak.
We now come to the valedictory session.
1 minute.
Professor T.N. Madan will be chairing. Yeah.
Loud. Good.
Karada?
No. No. Jisung chanting.
Conclusion.
No.
Ka.
No.
Ka.
Jugdomdi.
Correct. No. Okay. Now, nothing left. Everything expressed now. So 2 days serious meeting, really, I think, very, very useful, very helpful. Me personally also, you see, I received some new sort of
Information.
concept and learned some new experiences to individuals. Right? So very, very helpful, very useful. So then, as a Buddhist tradition, among the sort of student, young people, now time come, you yourself, each of you, must think more. And among yourself, you see some discussions. That is important. Simply, you see, kept what we said, and remember, is not sufficient. That's the first level of knowledge from hearing. Now, you must develop knowledge through analyze. Then once you develop firm conviction, what you understand through analyze, then that should make familiarize, and then eventually become part of your life. Then the effect really comes, your daily life. And then 1 year, 1 decade, and a few decades, and then time of death, you feel my life, meaningful life. Whether there is next life or not, then you already prepared something good for future. If no next life, then okay, finished. So I very much thank the concerned people at the Delhi University. You see, you, Kasota, accept, you see,
To organize.
Organize. So I very much appreciate, not only this time, but in the past, you give me opportunity to see some discussions. I very much appreciate. So one of my friend, one scientist, he publicly expressed he is not Buddhist, but he believes the rebirth. So he pray and hoping, you see, even next life, some work with me. So I think you, as a sort of Indian, you see, it is our common belief, law of karma and rebirth. So therefore, not only, you see, they carry some work together this lifetime, but in future also.
Holiness, Professor Tharpan, and friends. Every good thing must have an end, and these 2 wonderful days are coming to an end. And this is, as you know, the valedictory session. A valedictory session is for valedictions, for saying farewell. But when the farewell is going to be said by someone like His Holiness, it's more than a valediction, it's a benediction, it's a blessing. And the best thing would be to get on to what he will tell us next. But there are certain conventions, conventional formalities which had to be fulfilled. We will get a report, a consolidated report from Anuradha Sharma about what has happened yesterday and today. Not that you need to be reminded, but that's a convention. A cultural convention, social convention, whatever you want to call it. I am supposed to make a couple of opening remarks. I will be very brief and say very little beyond that. I do believe that all of us are going back laden with a lot of information about other cultures, other countries, other experiments than those which we know about. We are all going back with certain new interpretations and, I'm sure, many insights. What I would like, if I may, emphasize, I would very much like to emphasize, is the enormous emphasis that His Holiness has laid on the building of a humane, harmonious, a better, a happier world. A world in which we have to put behind us the divisions and the violence that have marked the history of humanity. And therefore, for a person in his position, the enormous emphasis he placed upon the secular approach, a humanist approach. Religions tend to divide, though that not necessarily be, need not necessarily happen that way. But he emphasized yesterday and today again and again, religion is individual. Nirvana is my personal concern. But what I can do for society, what I can do for humanity, is what binds me to other people. And that science, this is the age of science, and we cannot just put it aside as somebody's hobby. It may not be something that all of us can practice at a certain level of competence, but it is something by which we all can benefit by evolving a certain kind of outlook, the scientific outlook. So what is required is a secular humanist approach and ethics built on that, and ethics in which mindfulness, self-restraint, and altruism play a very important part. There was a man in this country of whom you have surely heard, called Mahatma Gandhi. And he had this wonderful gift of a holistic vision of combining religion and humanism. And at his prayer meetings every evening, he would have a selection of prayers from all religious traditions, including the Buddhist, the Christian, the Hindu, the Parsi, the Muslim. And while some of these hymns emphasize prayerfulness to the Almighty, like his very favorite Christian hymn, Lead Kindly, Lead Me On, which was addressed to Jesus Christ, he also laid enormous emphasis on altruism, on what we can do for other human beings. And this is not an act of arrogance, of hubris. What can we do for other human beings? We can feel their pain as our own. One of his very favorite hymns in the Gujarati language said that a person of God is one who feels the pain of the other as his own. to the Indian members of the audience, I'm talking about Narsi Mehta's hymn. Vaishnava Janato Tene Kahiye Je Pir Parai Jani Re. One who can feel the pain of another. So, altruism is the great virtue, and it has to be converted into action. And we have been very much here at a conference on pedagogy, on transformative pedagogies, and where this excellent presentation about mindfulness and other qualities of compassion that can be imparted to children through education. So one of the instruments of action for building a human world is a new look, a newly structured, a newly oriented pedagogy, and that's what we have been hearing about. Just one last comment I want to make, or maybe just two comments. One of the persons who has been deeply influenced by Buddhism in this country was the intellectual coming from the oppressed classes called B.R. Ambedkar, who took very much the view which His Holiness was stressing today. He said, dukkha, suffering, may indeed be the first of the noble truths, but it should not be personal suffering. That should be in our minds. It should be social suffering. So he felt that Buddhism may well be reinterpreted, and he presented his work on the Buddha and his Dhamma as something entirely based on the notion of dukkha as social and not personal. Just as His Holiness said, nirvana is our personal business, Ambedkar said, ending dukkha is a social responsibility. And it calls for a reshaping of culture. So there have been other thinkers in this country, like Rabindranath Tagore, who talked about active spirituality, and Swami Vivekananda, who talked of practical Vedanta. Vedanta amounts to nothing unless it's in the service of the people. I will conclude by recalling what I read some years ago, the importance of action. His Holiness was at the dedication ceremony of a Buddhist temple in Bihar. And the newspaper report said that the Chief Minister of Bihar invoked prayerfulness to the Buddha, invoked the blessings of the Buddha for the temple and for his state of Bihar. And His Holiness said, and I quote, I have copied it out, "For real change, we require more than the blessings of the Buddha, powerful though they may be, and more than prayer. We need action." I think these are the few remarks I thought I might offer. I have stolen some time from Anuradha Sharma, and I'm sure His Holiness will be compassionate enough to donate those minutes to her. In the Tibetan tradition, I understand that the Dalai Lama is an incarnation of Avalokiteshvara, the compassionate Bodhisattva. Anuradha.
Thank you, sir. I would be presenting a very brief report on behalf of my friends. Ms. Devika Mittal, Ms. Sonia Kumari, and Ms. Madhulika Sonka. This is a rapporteur's report. We tried to keep it very brief. A certain thematic tone of the conference was set in the beginning while we discussed the significance and centrality of the dialogical nature of knowledge generation in Buddhist traditions. The need to rethink beyond the accustomed binary patterns of thinking also emerged. The binaries of mind and heart, and the binaries of mythology and reason. His Holiness made a very significant point amidst all this, that similarities and dissimilarities do exist, and both are equally relevant. But if the insistence on dissimilarities creates conflicts and feelings of separateness, then it is better to highlight the similarities and not the divisions. Very important insights were provided into the cyclical pattern of ignorance and misery, and that cessation of any one of its units has the capacity to stop that cycle, leading to freedom from ignorance. We learned that compassion, altruism, loving kindness can all be cultivated, and pedagogical interventions can play a crucial role in this. Neuroscientific engagements with mind have been redirected towards understanding the impact of meditative practices on brain and on behavior. Science and spiritualism are seen coming out of their straight-jacketed spaces, and this has enriched the constructive knowledge that can immensely benefit humanity as a whole. Meditation has conventionally been relegated to the realm of spiritualism and religion for a long time. However, insights and visionary imaginative scholarly pursuits exploring the wider and deeper dimensions of meditative practices have brought out very significant and powerful linkages between meditation, pedagogy, human behavior, and science. Pedagogical practices are not only about training the mind, but also the heart. Finally, a reflexive attitude that is somewhere key to meditation holds great promises for this world. Meditativeness as a quality needs to be recognized in its diverse locations, in teaching practices, in interpersonal behavior, in reasoning, in experiencing music, in religion as well. The conference has widened the horizons of meaning of meditativeness by exploring and unraveling the connects that it has with wider personal and social contexts. Thank you. I now request His Holiness to say a few words as concluding remarks. I now request Professor Meenakshi Thapan to deliver the vote of thanks, please.
To say the formal vote of thanks, I'll just sit next to His Holiness and say it, since he is the one who inspired this meeting, and he is the one who initiated the theme for this conference, was very keen that it should take place in Delhi University, and that we should invite our friends from the Mind and Life Institute, also from Mongolia, and also have present not just Indian scientists, educators, practitioners from Delhi and outside Delhi, from Bangalore we have guests as well, but also have students and faculty from Delhi University present at this meeting. So we are very grateful to His Holiness for having given us this opportunity and for the support that you have extended to this. I feel really honored that the D.S. Kothari Center has been part of this event today. I also want to thank the Mind and Life Institute in the United States that has co-sponsored this event today. And apart from that, I'm extremely grateful to all the participants, the speakers who have come from different countries, from Colombo and from the US and from Canada and from Manesar and Bangalore, everywhere else to take part in this event. I'm really very grateful to everybody and to the volunteers and the students who have worked tirelessly to ensure that it's a wonderful success. Thank you, one and all.
Then, as you know, the quantum physics, I have keen interest. So the other day, I also expressed to you, in the future, I'm looking forward on such meeting and quantum physics and the mathematical philosophy, some sort of serious discussion. If possible, both groups, the Buddhist philosopher or student of that philosophy, mathematical philosophy mainly, and perhaps in some extent Chitta-mantra philosophy, then the quantum physics side make a paper. Then that paper can make some small booklet. Could be some useful, at least to some people. I think including this person, who really showing interest about shunyata practice, not just the theory. So when such meeting takes place, you should come. And then your head already shining. Now, next time, even more shining. Thank you. That I really feel.